What is ESG, environmental, social, and governance?
And so, well, you mentioned ESG. Let's talk a little about that. If that's all right.
Yeah.
So ESG, people have probably heard that term being thrown around a bit lately, but it stands for, it's very similar to sustainability report, but it stands for environmental, social, and governance.
Right.
And so the economic thing is not necessarily in there as much, but it's a similar reporting. And you're saying the sustainability report started in 1997. ESG started around 2004.
In the future, the SEC may make ESG reporting mandatory for both Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon dioxide emissions.
Yeah, you were talking about the SEC before. Maybe it has these policies they want to implement that would make it mandatory. And so they've been talking about this for quite a while, all this year anyway. And so if that happens, that to me, I think that may be a problem.
It's going to have to do with your greenhouse gas emissions is what it comes down to. So you would need to report what your Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions are, and those are what you call your direct and indirect emissions. So your direct emissions would be as your manufacturing process, how much carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases you're emitting while you're using that product, whereas the indirect is from the electricity that you're getting from an outside source.
Right,
even though you're not producing it there, it's being emitted somewhere else. So
you have to count all that, right?
You have to count all that kind of stuff, yeah. So
ESG reporting requires making a plan to demonstrate how you will reduce your carbon dioxide emissions.
As part of this requirement, you have to show what kind of governance you're doing to mitigate these climate change related risks and opportunities that they kind of give to you. So after you report your greenhouse gas emissions, you have to come up with a plan as far as what implementation measures you're going to take to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. And so that's where a lot of this may become more of an issue for companies to report this.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I mean, they should, at some point, it'd be nice if everybody reported that GHG emissions, and stuff that people, would at least see those numbers.
There are several kinds of actions you can take to reduce your carbon dioxide emissions, such as efficient manufacturing, on-site power, and less transportation.
So each year when you do your sustainability report, as part of what you would report to them too is that, these are the measures I'm taking, the opportunities I have to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions. For example, if we have more efficient manufacturing processes, we'll reduce the amount of energy that we're consuming to make our products, and that'll reduce it. If we're more efficient with our transportation, we don't do as many trips, we're more organized in how we do it, that'll reduce the amount of fuel we're using. So that's good. And then also if we reduce our waste goes to the landfill, that'll reduce it too, because we're not contributing to the amount of methane emissions that are coming about from it. So a lot of what these companies are doing too, they want to have on-site power production that uses green energy. So they do it on-site, and they do it using like solar or biomass or things like that.
ESG has contributed to some problems with agriculture by helping to ban nitrogen fertilizers.
But let's go back to you were mentioning the SEC regulations. They're not mandatory right now, but they're talking about making them mandatory. And so, to me, I think that would be a mistake to implement it in a place where you could bully people into compliance. And not saying that we shouldn't regulate things, but we got to take a little bit of a page from things that have been going on around the world. You heard about Holland, right? Recently.
Oh, yeah.
So now ESG isn't responsible for all that, but it did contribute to it. And so Holland wanted to get some of the companies there and some of the businesses wanted to get their ESG scores up higher because they wanted to get more revenue and more investors. And one way to do that, the government said, okay, well, hey, to help you out, we're going to, and it also would help out our water supply and our whole, economical and environmental system is to put a lot of restrictions on these chemical fertilizers for the agricultural business. And so I think, hey, that's great. We'll get those ESG scores up. We'll build better off. Solve a lot of problems.
Some companies use ESG to leverage the managing of financial or lending accounts that private companies, government institutions, or individuals might have.
Another aspect to that beyond the SEC is that some companies who have monopolies on certain things or close to a lot of business may decide, hey, I'm going to implement this on my own, right? And so you might have heard about that with the some of the financial investment firms that are implementing these policies and making a requirement for those that invest with them or those that they do business with as a fiduciary, like handing out loans or managing their portfolios or their 401ks. And if they can't comply so well, then they're not going to get the favorable rates, or they're not going to get rates at all. And so this is a big, huge company. They can afford to do that. So they can afford to kind of make everybody comply, but it may disadvantage companies that can't do that right now or that aren't as quick as they want them to be. And so
This has caused ESG antitrust rulings for several different U.S. states to come about in the recent past.
some states are pushing back. I think Arizona was the first one. Arizona Attorney General said, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not fair business practices right now. You're providing an uneven playing field right now, and so that's wrong." And so they're trying to make laws to push back, or they're proposing laws in 19 states now. I think it could be increasing to push back on that a little bit so that they won't be implemented in the wrong way. So I think we got to be careful, is all I'm saying, about how it's implemented. I think ESG is a great thing, but because it's so great, it can be manipulated into something that can be problematic.
ESG could really help companies that are improving the green or renewable energy infrastructure, such as producing equipment for hydrogen and biofuels.
And so I think actually the best thing for this would be to develop a system where we reward companies that are helping out the infrastructure to help bring about the green energy. Where the real impact will be as far as helping come out with equipment and machinery that use other types of renewable energy and fuel, such as hydrogen and biofuels.